Yes. So this class is all about the questions you ask. And while I had it paused, Elaine over there asked the question, and I'm not going to turn the camera towards the class until I figure that out yet. So trust me, there's a class out there.
I just heard
Said,
it.
you heard that they're making a movie about going to Mars.
Coming out shortly.
Yes.
With Sean.
I don't know about that one. I know last year there was a movie that they made. They made 6 episodes, and they gave you the impression, it was made by National Geographic, and they gave you the impression in that 6 episodes that there really were people on Mars. And the way they gave you that impression is half the episode was mixed with real people talking really about Mars. So Elon Musk got his face on the screen many times talking about his rocket, and then somehow or other his rocket got to Mars, and then they landed people on Mars and they had adventures on Mars, and it was cool. So if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't be able to tell truth from fiction, which was their point. In the last episode there was a disaster, and one of the people, deprived of oxygen, let in all the Martian atmosphere into his plant laboratory, and all the plants that were growing died. He died, and a number of other people in the colony died as well. And so we thought as viewers that that was the end. And so that the leader of the expedition on Earth, who was the twin of the person on Mars, she went and came to us to announce that clearly the expedition was a failure and it was over because so much stuff had blown up and had been destroyed. But in the last episode, the last words that she said on that episode 6, the one that we really couldn't distinguish fact from fiction, she said, "There is life on Mars." And I swear, I got goosebumps. It was like, whoa. So season 2 is starting in November, and you can watch it probably on National Geographic, which begins with the aftermath of the disaster, as well as the fact that they've discovered life on Mars. Now let me just say, so that's that. Just for the purposes of this class, and one person in this class who spoke up to me earlier, you can ask questions at any point in this class. Okay, the dumber they are, your words, not mine, the better they are. Okay, those are the questions that give me an opportunity to leave my prepared material for a while and say something else, which is not prepared, basically from my trove of knowledge. So you can ask me a question, anything. Go ahead. Do you have a question? That anytime today you have a question, you ask, okay? Good. Yes?
I got confused. Was the statement there is life on Mars, is that true or not?
Is the statement, is there life on Mars, true or not? See, that's the exciting thing. There is the possibility at any moment that somehow or other they could discover life on Mars. And so you would think it could be, you could see a headline in the paper at any moment saying they discovered life on Mars. But the problem with that is they never sent instruments to detect it. The only way they would be able to detect life on Mars at this point is if little furry animals scurried past the camera, or there were little trees popping up in the Martian desert. Then they could tell. But we have not sent an instrument to do that. There is an instrument going to Mars at this very moment. And it's not even going to walk around roll around like some of the other ones do. It's going to stand still and drill down into the Martian soil, and you think, oh, it's going to look for life. No, it's not. It doesn't have the instruments to do it. Again, it's looking for the precursors, the possibility. Is the ground under which I sit permanently going to be suitable for life if life exists on the planet, but they still won't be able to tell if life exists on the planet. That will be another possibility.
It depends what life.
It doesn't depend what life. Even if it's not good life on Saturday night, it's only a poor modicum, maybe Thursday night life. It doesn't matter. Any life whatsoever will do. Anything that is capable of reproducing from time to time and making a copy of itself that can evolve, that will not be exactly the same as the previous copy. You can take a sugar crystal, and you can take that sugar crystal, and you can put it in water, and it's going to make other sugar crystals. That is not life because there's no evolution involved. The thing has to reproduce, and it has to evolve. And if it can do those two things, it's called life. It doesn't make any difference what it does. Okay? It just has to do those two things. So we haven't looked for it. But as long as we're talking about it, and now this is where you people out there, if there's anybody out there at all, because I have no idea, this is a test. I have two videos that will answer the question of whether or not there's life on Mars, but unfortunately it's in the realm of what can be rather than what is. So one of the things they're going to do is they're going to send to Mars in 2020. They're going to send to Mars in 2020 a test vehicle. Remember, there's this vehicle they're going to send another rover to Mars, and this other rover is again not going to look for life. I don't know what it's going to do. It's just they don't build in these things like a DNA tester. You know, is this DNA? They don't build that into the machine. But at least this one is going to come up. This one is going to come with something that we all recognize as being really cool, even if it doesn't look for life. This is one of the next steps on Mars. Let me point my camera towards it a little bit better, so I can get a little bit better angle at that. Okay, it's still crappy if you're watching on the web. It's horrible, in fact. But what the hell? It's a Mars helicopter demonstration, and with some luck, and I have a feeling we're going to need it, because it doesn't look like it's coming in anytime soon. We will get a video showing a helicopter that they're going to fly on Mars in the near future, and I'm going to pause this until it happens. So they're actually going to be sending a helicopter to Mars. How come a helicopter can work? Because the atmosphere is 1/100th of the density of the Earth's atmosphere. So it's like being able to fly a helicopter 10 miles over Mount Everest. It's very hard to fly a helicopter over Mount Everest, but this helicopter is designed to be able to fly high over Martian landscape. And the reason it's able to do that is because, I'm going to stop this because it's annoying. The reason it's able to do this is because it's Mars has a low gravity, even though it has very little atmosphere. Its gravity is also low. So the fact is that the helicopter only has to get a certain amount of lift to be able to get up. So the factor of low gravity and low atmosphere work together. With a helicopter, you'll be able to actually view Mars and get around Mars and see a lot more of Mars than can be normally seen. They have spacecraft that are, 100 miles up. This one's going to be 12 feet up, and we'll be able to do a much better job. But you're not going to see any trees nor any animals scurrying around. Yes?
Shouldn't gravity on Mars be almost the same as Earth because it's almost as big?
Oh, Mars is not anywhere near as big as the Earth, and so the gravity is nowhere near as big. I think, if I recall, the gravity is 1/4 that of the Earth. The Moon's is 1/6 that of the Earth. So really, it's when you see people prancing around on Mars, in the movies, they usually neglect to show them loping around like they did on the moon. People would walk more like they did on the moon than they do on Earth. The other thing that is likely to happen in the near future, and I'm going to try to play this video. Actually, it's not likely to happen, but in fact, if we're ever going to find out if there's life on Mars, what we have to do is this, and this, we'll see if this plays. And if it does, yay. This is the helicopter again. Stop that.
It is the rover.
Yeah. No, I don't want the helicopter.
No, you have the rover.
Yes.
Yes, they are.
Now, I'm going to stop the helicopter. I'm going to go back and do. This is something that, if it's real, and it is not real, when it becomes real, then we will know whether there really is life on Mars. And whether we're going to know whether there's life on Mars before this, and I'm sort of vamping until this thing comes in, which is showing no desire to do that. So I'm going to just, oh, there it is, okay. And sound. And I give up. What this video shows is that, what this video shows is the idea that we will, at some point in the future, in order to find out whether there's life on Mars, we're not going to go to Mars anytime soon. What we're going to do is we're going to send a rover to Mars, and the Mars rover is going to run around Mars and pick up stuff that it thinks it's cool, like an astronaut would do. And then it's going to put it into little canisters, leave the canisters lying around. And then that's all it can do, because it has no rocket engines. The next thing they send to Mars will not be good at roving. It won't have all those instruments for roving, but it'll be really good at pickup sticks. And what it'll do is it'll pick up these. That's what this video actually shows. I'll show this another time. It picks up this, it picks up that piece of thing that has been pre-canistered, puts it in its hold, puts it into the device that's designed to hold it, and then that device closes up. It's a rocket ship. It takes off. It ends up in Mars orbit, where in Mars orbit there's another spaceship that's designed to mate with it, rendezvous with it. And that other spaceship takes the canister, places it aboard its own spaceship, and goes back to Earth. Wow. That's what's required for us at this time to find out whether there's life on Mars. And none of that is on the drawing boards. Okay? So is there life on Mars? I don't know. Take a lot of working out to do.
But if it's not on the board, it means they're not interested in that.
Of course they're interested in it. Of course they're interested in it.
They don't have the money.
They don't have the money.
The money.
Do you have the money? You have the money? If you have the money, they're interested. Could I borrow, let's say, $50 billion? Because if you've got it, and there are some people who do, for instance, Bezos. And Bezos is one of these guys who is crazy enough, perhaps, to say, I'll shell out $50 million, let's make one of those. He can afford it. And the technology is there. We can build that. It's not hard. It's just expensive because it's never been built before. Every single component has to be built and tested. So it's not going to be built anytime soon.
But they're not confident. Otherwise, they would find the money. The confidence that they will find it is.
They're not. The only way they'll be confident is if on the TV show called Mars, okay, they convince people that it's already true, and that we only have to go to find it out. But we can't be confident that there's life on Mars till we discover life on Mars. So we could do all of that $50 billion price tag that I had made up, and then it could come back empty, right? So I don't know. In the meantime, what's going on today is an event in the history of space travel, that has taken place this week. I love things that took place this week. It's like news of astronomy. The news is this week NASA has decided that their rover, Opportunity, which has been roving the planet Mars, not for the 90 days that it was designed for, but for 15 years, almost 15 years, Opportunity has been roving the surface of Mars for the unbelievably long period of time, and suddenly, not so suddenly, it went dead. And now they've given it 45 days to wake up, or it's all over. We're shutting down. Everybody go home. So right now is what I'm saying to you people.
Chip in the money.
Well, you can't chip in the money, but what you can do is you can put you can tweet. You can tweet hashtag Go Oppy, OPPY. If you hashtag Go Oppy, that will indicate your support that NASA not terminate this program in the next 45 days. So let me tell you about it. Let me tell you what the story is. Now, I love this. And sorry, you people out there, you know, I need a second crew, okay? And you guys need to pay for this so that I can get a second crew to do this, all right? So I'm just going to wheel you over for a second. So you can see that. What do we have? That's better. Okay. So I know you can't see it, but anyway, this is Mars normally. This is Mars last week, a few weeks ago. Around June 10th of this year, Mars changed from this to this. This is a planet-wide dust storm where the dust has been raised as high as 10 miles into the sky, obliterating all the surface features on Mars. This sort of thing is not unusual as things go, because since the beginning of the space age we have learned that this happens every few years. So if you're going to go to Mars and you're going to colonize Mars, you better be prepared for planet-wide dust storms that can be so annoying that it's as if you were being covered by volcanic ash and you were in the lee of volcanic eruption, volcanic ash falling all over you, and it's pitch black everywhere you look. That's what it's like under this cloud. Under this cloud, it's pitch black. And why do we care if it's pitch black? For a couple of reasons. One of them is that rover, Opportunity, which I'll show you in a bit, that rover is, unfortunately,
Under the cloud.
it needs sunlight. And it isn't getting any sunlight. And if it doesn't get sunlight, you know what happens?
It dies.
It dies. Dies. You take your very fine watch. Okay? You take your very fine watch, which doesn't die because it's got a nice battery in it. You take your very fine watch and you put it in the freezer. Okay, I don't know if that's enough to kill it, but it is pretty good way of killing it. And if that's not good enough, take it out in an Alaskan winter and leave it outside. Car batteries die. All sorts of batteries, they literally die and they don't come back to life. Rechargeable batteries especially. It has rechargeable batteries. If the batteries don't come back to life, the rover is dead. Now the question is, Does it have enough life? This is not the first time this has happened to Opportunity. Opportunity's been on Mars so long that this is not its first dust storm. It survived a planet-wide dust storm 7 years ago, 2007, which is 11 years ago, because it's been here 15 years. It survived it. In fact, there were two rovers at that time, Opportunity and Spirit, and both those rovers survived that dust storm. Later on, Spirit had its problems. It had a stuck wheel, and it couldn't move, and it needed to move because it was going to be winter, and the sun was going to be over there, so it needed to put its solar panels like this to catch the winter sunlight, so it could keep its batteries warm. But unfortunately, it got stuck pointing in this direction, and so it didn't catch enough sunlight. The batteries didn't stay warm, and Spirit died. It wasn't doing so well in the first place because it couldn't move, but at least they expected to be able to take continuing wind measurements and other measurements that it could take in a stationary position, but it died. And they literally kept looking for it, and they kept looking for it. Why? Because they had a team. The Opportunity team was also working their own rover, and the Opportunity rover was moving along quite well. So they just shifted the people around. There were people who were working Spirit. There were people who were working Opportunity, and they combined them. And you can't have the same team because they operate on different shifts. Basically, Spirit and Opportunity were on different sides of the planet. So some team on Earth was sleeping while other teams on Earth were awake. Anyway, they took teams, they combined the teams, and listened for Spirit to wake up and say, hello, hello. And of course, Spirit doesn't know how to do that because Spirit, and now Opportunity, when it says hello, it's supposed to say hello when the Earth is facing it. There's no point in saying hello when it's on the wrong side of the planet. But Opportunity doesn't know where it is because it lost its clock. And if its clock, see, if the batteries are working but its clock is dead, they'll have to reset the clock. And they won't know that until Opportunity comes and talks back to Earth. At the present time, they're just looking for any signal from Opportunity. If Opportunity makes a sound, and not a sound, but a wave, they'll catch it and they'll say, "Oh, Opportunity, no, you got the wrong time. Let me tell you what the time is. Let me tell you some other things before you start moving. Don't try to move. I want you to take pictures." They're going to have a lot of stuff they're going to have to do with Opportunity before it wakes up again fully, if it wakes up at all, because it may have lost quite a bit of consciousness. Yes.
It must take years of planning and preparation before the thing takes off and gets there.
It must take years of planning
How
and
many years
preparation.
does it take? And in that interim, by the time it gets there, we probably have come up with more advanced technology, so it won't happen the next time.
Well,
How long does it take?
how long does it take to make a rover?
Right.
These things.
Make it and get it there.
Make it and get it there. These things can take, and believe me, I'm making this up right now, okay? But it doesn't take a year or two. It doesn't take a year or three. It doesn't take a year or 5. It takes something like 7 years or more, and funding, you need to get the funding, so if you count the time to get the funding and then to vote on what's going to be on the spacecraft, and you don't have money for this instrument, but that instrument, so the two scientists who want this instrument, they have to argue, and then a committee decides which instrument can be sent because there's not enough money for both, and that goes on all the time. So let's say 7 to 10 years, okay? And there is a spacecraft on Mars right now that is more advanced than Opportunity. And it doesn't use solar power. It's called Curiosity Mars Science Laboratory, and it is not bothered by this dust storm. So all the while this is going on, we have a spacecraft roving around Mars, checking things out in the dark, or practical darkness. because it's run by a radioactive isotope, plutonium-238, and it can stay there and just care about the weather. It doesn't care about the sun, and it's just doing its thing. But opportunity needs the sunlight. And while the sun is not shining, there is the possibility that it's getting light from everywhere because there's so much dust in the atmosphere. You know, on a cloudy day, the sun doesn't just come from the sun, it comes from the clouds all over the place. So a cloudy day has sunlight coming from all directions. So that's a possibility that it's getting sunlight from all directions. Yes?
What's the basis of a nuclear motor?
What's the
It can't
basis
be,
of a nuclear motor?
Yeah, it can't be steam.
No, a nuclear motor is powered by a full plutonium, not the kind that blows up in atomic bombs, but unfortunately, the type that is poisonous is if inhaled. In fact, it's the most poisonous substance known to man. But it is encased in ceramic. It is something that stays hot and cools down slowly over hundreds of years. Not thousands, but hundreds of years. And while it's hot, it's capable. So if you had something that's hot, and you can make an engine run as long as you've got something that's cool. You need a place to take the heat and cool it off over here. And you can invent many different engines that can use the heat you could run a steam engine. Okay? You could literally run a steam engine. That thing could run a steam engine, and the steam engine could power a generator, and the generator could run the electricity, and that would work.
But
It's
what
not the way
I'm
they do it.
asking is, it's not a steam engine because you have a temperature problem there.
No, you don't. You could boil water with that device. You could boil water with the device, and you could literally construct a steam engine. It would be a
With the
silly.
recycling water?
The water would cool off as it moves away from that heat source, and then the water would be pumped back. It would be turned to steam, and then would come again, and it would not have to boil off at all. So you wouldn't have to replenish the water. It would be a continuous cycle. But you wouldn't do that because it's a really bad idea. But it's still one of hundreds of ideas. All you need is a heat source and a heat sink, and you can build an engine. That's all you need. Yes, in the back.
Haven't they installed a simple thing like a mirror so that the stupid thing is turning the wrong way, it would reflect the light?
If they say that again, have they installed a mirror?
Couldn't they have put in a mirror?
A mirror.
somewhere Before, or would it work next time so that when it's turned around the wrong way?
Oh, couldn't they have
light
put a
would
mirror in
reflect?
so that it was what is facing? No, the solar panels are these. You're not going to install a mirror which could shade the solar panels in other situations. You want to save spirit. You say Spirit engineers should have installed a mirror. No, but Spirit had this is Spirit. This is all it could do. This is all it could do. You couldn't put a mirror on this thing to shine more light. That doesn't work. Elaine?
What's the point of going to Mars if it's covered with all this dust, the sand?
What's the point of going to Mars?
Where are you gonna? What can you see?
Why would you go to Mars in the first place? Why would you go to? Because it's there. Is the answer that Hillary gave for climbing Mount Everest.
I know, but
And there's no better reason. Because if you start to ask the question carefully, and you put down all the reasons to go and not to go, there's no reason to go, in my opinion. You can send robots and come back with stuff, including that robot that goes to Mars, digs a hole, puts stuff in canisters, puts the canisters in another canister, the canister leaves to Mars orbit, the Mars orbit goes to Earth. Why not do that instead of sending people to Mars?
so where are we ever going to go?
Are we ever going to go to Mars? Of course we're going to go to Mars. Because it's going to be a space race. Somebody will go to Mars. The Chinese will go to Mars. Okay?
Nobody can live there. I mean,
Of course you can live there. You just bring everything you need. You need to bring your nail clippers. because don't forget your nail clippers, and you need to bring a lot of other things.
Under the ground.
You live under the ground. That's it. Oh, and in the National Geographic, by the way, they decided that they were going to live under the ground. So on the second or third episode, they moved the entire colony underground in a lava pit. So they're all living underground, so they're protected from the radiation and they're protected from the micrometeorites which get through. So basically, if you want to live on Mars, you want to dig a hole. I don't know why people are going to go there.
I know, but the point is to move our civilization.
Do we want to move our civilization there?
Elsewhere because this planet has been.
So move our civilization to Mars, because if we don't do that, chances are we're going to wipe ourselves out as a species, and then our species will survive on Mars. Now, I ask you, if we're such a species that is willing to wipe an entire planet's worth of people out, I don't know whether or not we're worth preserving as a species in the first place. And besides which, the time frames are completely wrong. People exist on this planet for 100,000 years, let's say, with the advent of civilization. 10,000 years if you count from the beginning of agriculture. We have been a technological civilization for maybe 1,000 years or maybe 100 years, depending upon how you count. Or maybe we're only a technological civilization since the invention of the iPhone. You could argue that. And since the invention of the iPhone, you could also say that from that point to the time we destroy ourselves as a civilization could literally happen in the blink of an astronomical eye. There's no reason to think that we can preserve ourselves on Mars any better than we can preserve ourselves on the Earth. If you want to preserve yourself on Earth, dig a hole, for God's sakes. Why go to Mars? There are people who say that the only way to preserve the human race is to go to Mars. I am not a subscriber to that point of view, because I don't think that you can create a survivable civilization which does not need to be replenished in any kind of reasonable time frame. If you say 10,000 years of commerce between Earth and Mars, and if that sort of thing is a scenario that you've got in your brain, then maybe after 10,000 years, or maybe it's just 1,000 years, maybe after 1,000 years, you can put a civilization on Mars, and they will make their own nail clippers, okay? But I don't know that they can survive without the necessary nail clippers. Yes?
Back to opportunity, I'm voting to let it die, because nowhere on Earth are we using 20-year-old equipment to research. It's the waste of.
Well, Kurt's saying he's voting to let it die, and I'm of the agreement, except that I think the challenge is worth the challenge. The idea of keeping that sucker alive for a longer period of time, so we could even have an even longer record. 15 years. 15 years.
To get in the Guinness Book of Records.
It's going to be there for a long time, the Guinness Book of Records. So, and what are they learning that's new? Every week on Mars, you know what they discover? Water. They keep discovering water. They say this is something they do say. They say they discovered water on Mars about 10,000 times already. Yeah.
So what's the point of keep on discovering?
What's the point of keep on discovering water?
The same thing.
Right.
I haven't found anything else. They found water.
They found water.
Okay.
Right. So good.
So it's a done deal.
Done deal.
Let's move on.
Let's move on. Yes.
Yeah, do these dust storms change the topography of Mars in any way?
They do. They do indeed. In fact, I have a video, which don't trust videos at this point. I have a video which shows the Spirit's wheels when it was stuck in the ground during the dust storm. And you can literally see, as you're staring at the wheel, you can literally see little sand dunes building up right near the wheel. You can see the dust being blown, and you can see the tracks of the rover being erased by the wind. So yeah, photography all the time. In fact, okay, let's see what I'm going to.
That was the premise of the movie, that he got lost in a dust storm, right? If I remember.
Well, the movie's premise was the movie, The Martian's premise was really kind of ridiculous because the wind on Mars, which blows hundreds of miles per hour, its effective strength is like this. So the winds aren't that
Not strong.
strong. But the particles are very small. So if you're blowing dust off the desk, you can do it. What did I want to show you? I wanted to show you, why did I move this to this position? To see, I wanted to show you just randomly some of the things that, so what happens on Mars? I want you to see this picture. This picture, let me move this sucker back. This is no way to run a video. There's no way to run a video. Boy, is this amateur production. You can't do more amateur than this. Believe me, you can't.
It's working. So
Yeah. Right, but what's going on in this picture, if you can see it, and let's see if you can see it. Yeah. What do we see? We see the tracks of the rover. We see hills in the background. We see foreground. But what's that?
it's like steam.
Kaiser.
That is called a dust devil. That's a dust devil. And you've seen them on Earth. You've seen them in alleyways. This one could be as tall as 10 kilometers tall in the atmosphere. And they move slowly across the landscape. I have a movie which I don't
What's
dare
it called?
called a dust devil.
It's like a
And you can
tornado.
see it moving across the landscape in a movie that I have that I'm not going to attempt today because of the poor internet. And why do I care about dust devils? Because dust devils are everywhere on Mars, and they are very useful creatures for cleaning the solar panels of your trusty rovers. So when they designed the rovers, they said, these rovers are going to be lasting for about 90 days, and they're going to get covered with dust, and then they're not going to be able to produce enough electricity, so mission is over after 90 days. They did not count on the fact that the winds would also blow the dust off the panels. And these dust devils have come and gone and cleaned the panels of these rovers many, many times. So, why do I tell you that you should save OPI? # save OPI. # go OPI. Because they want to turn off the funding for the people who watch for Opportunity right before the heavy dust devil season. There's a dust devil season that's coming in November that could clean the solar panels from Opportunity's solar cells, and they're going to turn it off just when the dust devils are reaching their peak, just when the best opportunity to clean the panels occurs is when they're shutting down the funding to look for it. So
Don't they know that?
yeah, they know it.
So that's not, delay it 2 weeks.
Okay, see, now I really don't know why people do stuff. I really don't know why
Must we
people
have a
do stupid
moron
stuff.
up there?
I mean,
It makes no sense.
really, of course it makes no sense. Why do they not fund so many? Why do they not think that it's important to give kids a good education by throwing a lot of money at their education? Why don't they do that? We have a lot of money. Why are we putting it into everything else but education, right? I have no idea. Why do people do that?
Same Michigan.
Same Michigan. I have no idea. Why are they closing this down? No idea.
Why does a moron get elected?
Why does a moron get elected? No politics. There's no politics
Okay, sorry.
in this class, okay?
Can't help myself.
No politics, okay?
I
Because,
can't
you
help
know,
myself.
they could be watching this anywhere in the world, you know? Anywhere, this would be the web.
They're
This is the
all right.
world wide. Have you heard World Wide Web? It's not us. It's everybody else. Yeah, right. Okay, so what else did I want to show you on this thing? So I wanted to show you. There's so much to show you because really I've just been fooling around because of this this video thing. There's so much to show. For example, Google Earth. Google Earth is amazing. You can go to Google Earth, and everybody has Google Earth. It's free. And up here in the top, there's this little Saturn-like device, and you can press the Saturn, and you can choose Mars. And instead of it being Google Earth, it's Google Mars. And you can go visit Mars on Google Earth the same way you can visit Earth on Google Earth. So now, unfortunately, they haven't refreshed the their take on Mars for many years since the day they sort of put this up. They really haven't updated it in any way. Nevertheless, what they did do is quite remarkable. So this is Opportunity's path. I'm going to just roll out for a second so you can see that I'm talking about Mars. Okay, this is Mars, right? And you can see there's strips where they've taken pictures and strips where they've taken it with other cameras. But I'm just going to zoom in on this one place on Mars, which is, am I going back to the same place? Yeah. No, I didn't go back to the same place. Okay. This is where I wanted to go. This is the path that Opportunity has taken over much of its 15 years. But as I said, it's not updated, so it's not all of it. But I do want to show you that it started out here where the American flag is, and it's now here and beyond. This crater is gigantic. It's a gigantic crater. We got really stoked when Opportunity went to this crater after it had been on Mars for quite a number of years. It got to go to this crater, and this crater, you see, this is a small crater compared to this one. It's a small one. Is my video looking at all at that, folks? On the World Wide Web, are you seeing any of this at all? I have no idea. But if you could go, take a look if you can. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. All right. So I'm going to zoom in on part of that path, and you can see that as I zoom in, there are place names and there are cameras that are being shown. And you can see that the picture of Victoria Crater is, in fact, quite extensive. It was taken from orbit. The picture of Victoria Crater is taken from orbit. So when I tool around and look at Victoria Crater, this is pictures that were taken from orbit, and this is put together as data, not photographs, but data. So this is what Victoria looks like. And look at the sand dunes down there. Maybe we'll catch the sand dunes from our place on the surface of Mars. Let's see if we can take a look inside the crater from the ground. Okay, we're going to fly into that spot, and let's look around. We're on the ground. Let's look around. Can we see that? We can see from the ground, we can see those sand dunes. This is not some sort of shot taken from 100 miles up. This is taken from right at the crater's edge. In fact, Opportunity was so daring, and there's the solar panels, because Opportunity is taking a picture of itself. This is one of the greatest pictures ever taken of Mars. There's the solar panels, and they're clean. And how much further can we? And we can see the horizon. We can see the crater edge. Okay. Let's exit this photo and see if we can see one more. Let's see if we can see from here. Aha. Now look at that. That is part of the crater rim. It's part of the comings and goings of the rim. But the interesting thing is, the panorama only goes so far. What I'm going to do is I'm going to exit the photo, and you can see that it's the same thing. You can see that we're looking at the same thing. This is, of course, from outer space, from a satellite, but we're looking in exactly the same spot, and you can see where we were looking at. You can see that spot where it says Cape Verde. That was a picture taken from the ground. Opportunity has traveled, and you can see the path that Opportunity took. It went back and forth and in and out. It even went down into the crater a little bit. It was quite courageous because they thought, listen, this is the best opportunity we're going to get to go into a crater. Let's go. Let's take a chance. And they went down a bit, and they were able to get out. And there are even movies of it trying to get out and gets out. It's very exciting. Again, I don't trust the video here to be able to do that.
The attendance.
And we have attendance to take. I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to stop the video that I'm taking, and then I'll be able to try to see if I can do some more stuff. Okay?
There's no scale of